section between Warden and Kennedy was opened in 1980. Line 2 has fixed black signaling. No automated train control with these cars. These are 30-plus-year-old cars, and they won't even attempt to install that until new cars are delivered. They're going to try to keep these cars running until at least 2030, 2031. This yellow over lunar signal is a grade timing signal, meaning when the train hits it, it sets off a timer. And if the train is going through the section of track at the proper speed and not going too fast, the timer will expire by the time it gets to the next signal, and it will turn green. The signals are all about timing pretty much. Going at the right speed on the grade or around a curve, trying to protect yourself and stay away from the train in front of you. The signals will activate timers, and if you run out of the timer before you get to the signal, you should have the signal indication to proceed. With grade timing, you want to be able to get through the block before the timer expires. If the timer doesn't expire by the time you get to that signal, the trip arm will go up and it will stop the train. But if it goes down and expires before you get there, the trip arm will drop, you'll get the clear signal, and you can proceed. This signal indication indicates he's entering a time block. The next signal will be red only due to grade timing. The Warden station opened in 1968. This line uses 600-volt DC third rail, and contrary to belief, this is not standard gauge, not the usual 4 feet 8.5 inches. This is actually slightly broader at 4 feet 10 and 7/8 inches. So you can appreciate a little extra room on board. These cars were built back in 1995 by Bombardier in Thunder Bay, Ontario. These cars have ad-trans propulsion, and I love the sound they make when they accelerate. You can hear them transitioning and stepping up repetitiously, going and consequently when they slow down, they transition down. And that sound is created by the linear induction motors that these cars have. Don't ask me to elaborate on the electronic specifics of these things. This Bloor Street, Danforth Avenue, Line 2 was completed in 1966. The first subway that was completed was the Yonge Street subway back in 1954. The voiceover announcement you hear in the background is that of TTC Communications employee Susan Bigioni. I'm not sure if she still works for the TTC, but I've heard she's a very likable, affable person. And doing voiceovers, I know, can be a bit tedious. I know when I do narration on YouTube, after a while I feel like I've become monotonic. She may have fallen into that trap. She sounds sort of the way I used to sound when I came back to work after a long vacation and got on the telephone. And here at Main Street, you can transfer to the 506 streetcar via Carlton and College Streets. Goes right past the old Maple Leaf Gardens. Go Leafs go, but they don't play there anymore. They're at Scotiabank Arena now, but they need to go. They haven't won since I was 11 years old, and I'm 71 now. Notice the tubular tunnel construction here. Mostly it's a box-type tunnel, but tubular tunnel sections are used mainly due to safety concerns, the condition of the ground, and engineering efficiency. It does create a vacuum when these trains go through these tubes, and at the next station you can always tell when a train is coming because a gale force wind starts to blow. And here we go back to the box tunnel design, which is used on the majority of the line. There's very frequent service on line 2. In off-peak hours, it's roughly every 5 minutes. During the rush hour, maybe every 2 to 3 minutes.
The next station is Coxwell Station. At Coxwell Station, this train will be going for a quick change. Again, with the next train going at Coxwell Station for a quick change. Station is Greenwood Station. Arriving at Greenwood Station. The next station is Dawnland Station.
The track veering off to the left here heads to Greenwood Yard. That's the largest subway yard for the Line 2 equipment. Well, here is the west leg of the Y coming from Greenwood Yard.
Arriving at Dawnland Station. The next station is Keele Station. Arriving at Keele Station.
There are two types of subway cars still remaining in service on the TTC. These T1 cars, built by Bombardier of Thunder Bay, Ontario, there's about 350 plus of them. The other types of cars are the Line 1 Young University and the Line 4 Shepherd Avenue subway, which use Bombardier Thunder Bay built rocket cars with full width cabs. There's about 480 of those.
Arriving at Broadview Station.
Broadview is a very important stop. Here you transfer to 3 different streetcar lines. You have the 504B via King Street downtown to the Dufferin Gate Loop. Then you have the 505 to Dundas West via Dundas Street through downtown. And then the 508, which goes all the way to Long Branch, that's way west of town, via King Street. The 508 is a limited service.
The next station is Castle Frank Station.
Up to now, we've been running pretty much a little ways north parallel to Danforth Avenue, but that's going to change. We're about to pass over the Prince Edward Viaduct, and we are now under Bloor Street. This viaduct, along with Bloor Street, crosses over the Don River, the Don Valley. As you can see, there are some temporary speed restrictions with some limiting signal lights in the middle of the gauge.
Arriving at Castle Frank Station. Next station is Sherburne Station. Arriving at Sherburne Station.
No, we go back to the tubular tunnel construction again. And another vacuum is going to be generated, and the passengers at the next stop of Young Street are really going to get a big charge out of it. When you're waiting there, it's really calm, and then as the train gets closer, a nasty gust starts blowing. A couple of times I was standing at Yonge Street and I almost got knocked on my rear end. Yes, the Toronto Transit Commission generates its own climate. Well, Yonge Street is a very important stop. Here you can connect with the Yonge Street subway, the east leg of the Line 1 subway. It was built in 1954. When service started, it had a fleet of red Gloucester, England-built cars. I rode on a few of them. Start combing your hair, folks. Track veering off to the left makes a connection with the University Avenue section of Line 1. This station is in the fashionable Yorkville section of the city. There are plenty of nice shops and restaurants in the area. Here at St. George, you can connect to the west leg of the Line 1 subway. That end runs under University Avenue and heads up to the Vaughan Metropolitan Center. The Yonge Street line on the north end goes to Finch Avenue. From Finch to the Vaughan Metropolitan Center is quite a long distance, but the distance between the two endpoints isn't all that far. It takes a big U-shaped routing. That is undoubtedly a western connection off the University Avenue Line 1 to this line.
Arriving at Spadina Station.
Spadina is an important stop also. Here you can also make a connection to the west leg of the Line 1 subway. And you can also transfer to the 510 streetcar, which goes down to Union Station. You might be inclined to call this place Spadina, but it's Spadina, like Regina, Saskatchewan. Many people are inclined to call that city Regina. And we have another speed restriction here.
Bathurst Station. Arriving at Bathurst Station.
Bathurst Street, you can connect to the 511 streetcar, which goes down to the exhibition. And you can also access the Bathurst Street Railfan Bridge using that service. In another couple of weeks, the 511 is really going to see an increase in ridership as the Canadian National Exhibition will start right through Labor Day weekend, starting August 15th. The Canadian National Exhibition is a huge fair here in Toronto.
The next station is Christie Station. Arriving at Christie Station.
Years ago, they used to have conductors on board, if that's what they're called, blow whistles prior to the doors closing, like police whistles. They don't engage in that practice anymore.
The next station is Islington Station.
Looks like some kind of a storage track to our left.
Arriving at Islington Station. station is Dufferin Station.
These cars, for their age, they still look quite good. But I know the TTC is trying their darndest to keep these things running until they get new equipment. It might take another 5 years before that starts to happen.
Arriving at Lansdowne Station. The next station is Dundas West Station.
And here we go with the tubular tunnel design again. So the people at the next stop of Dundas West are going to get a bad hair day.
Arriving at Dundas West Station.
Dundas West is a very important stop. It's the last station on line 2 where you connect to streetcars. You can connect to the 504A to Distillery Loop via King Street downtown, and you can connect to the 505 to Broadview via College Street and Carlton Street downtown, and you get to pass by the old Maple Leaf Gardens. The 505 has the distinction of being the only trolley line that starts at a line 2 station and loops through the city and ends at another line 2 station, that being Broadview. I should also add that you can connect to the Union Pearson Express train here.
Keele Station.
Now we're actually outside again. Haven't seen daylight since the Prince Edward Viaduct. There aren't really many long stretches of daylight on this end of the Line 2 subway. The tracks on the extreme left lead back to Keele Yard. That's a much smaller yard than Greenwood Yard is. Looks like if you're going in this direction, you have to make a reverse move to get into the yard. Toronto is a great city. I've always loved coming here, but a lot of Canadians don't think very much of this city at all. They don't like the crowds, the high crime, people are unfriendly. Maybe compared to other parts of Canada that would be true, but it's all relative. Like an American like myself, we find a city like this to be very invigorating, very enlightening, a breath of fresh air, so to speak. So, I don't know, but there's a comedy movie that was put out in 2007 called Let's All Hate Toronto. I saw it, it's funny. And as we enjoy another short stretch of daylight, probably the worst thing about Toronto, as far as I'm concerned, are the Toronto Maple Leafs. They have an amazing talent for finding new, innovative ways to lose. One of these days, they'll win. I know a lot of Canadians are frustrated with the Leafs too, but imagine all the abuse that I get on Long Island from Ranger fans, Islander fans, Devils fans. They're constantly berating me about rooting for the Leafs.
Arriving at Runnymede Station.
I have to say this, getting back to the Toronto Maple Leafs, my favorite all-time Maple Leafs player was number 27, Darryl Sittler. He was like the Rock of Gibraltar, that guy. Tough guy. 1975-76, he had probably the best season of any player in the NHL. He scored 10 points in a game, got 6 goals in that same game, scored 5 goals in a playoff game, and he won the Canada Cup in overtime against Czechoslovakia. Great player that year. He was better than Guy Lafleur that year. Guy Lafleur couldn't do the things that Darryl Sittler did that year. Just to show you how appreciated Darryl Sittler was, their provocative owner, Harold Ballard, rewarded him with a meager silver tea set. I didn't care for Harold Ballard and his anti-American innuendos, and I know Darryl Sittler didn't care for him either, but not entirely for the same reasons. Here we are outside again, ever so briefly. This line seems to cut into the sides of hills and burrows underneath them. We're arriving at Old Mill Station now. Did you hear that unkind word mentioned from that passenger in the background?
I thought Canadians were nice. I thought Canadians were nice.
You hear me in the background saying, I thought Canadians were nice. I said that because there was an ornery woman calling the passenger an a-hole. All he was doing was standing near the doorway like so many other people. And she had to get the last word in. I defended the guy. I guess not all Canadians are nice.
Probably one of maybe 500 people she irritated today. Probably.
I'm amazed at how many short stretches of open running there is on this portion of line 2.
Wouldn't lose sleep over it.
Arriving at Islington Station.
Until 1980, this was the western terminal for the Line 2 subway. At one time, you could connect to an airport express bus from here, but that no longer operates. You can catch the 900 express bus to Pearson International Airport at the next and final stop of Kipling.
The next station is Kipling Station.
All right, we're out in daylight for good now as we approach our final stop of Kipling. Right alongside the tracks here, on the left is the Canadian Pacific Kansas City Gold Subdivision. That's the main line from Toronto to Windsor, Ontario. And as we approach our final stop at Kipling, I wish to extend my appreciation and thanks to the skill and courtesy of the employees of the Toronto Transit Commission. Don't go away yet, folks. We'll capture some trackside scenes of these classic subway cars at a number of locations to the east. And we'll visit select locations on Line 2, getting these classics. This is Old Mill, eastbound train. Here comes a Kipling-bound train into Old Mill. Line 2 is kind of strange. It's mostly underground. There are some peekaboo sections of daylight. Yeah, the headways are pretty good between trains. Here we have another eastbound for Kennedy. This station is built on a hillside. One end is in a tunnel and one end is elevated above a little valley. Further east at Hyde Park. We're just east of a little opening in the railroad. Here comes a westbound that will surely be briefly emerging in sunlight. Keele. This is a good spot to shoot the subway trains. There's no girders in between the rails here. Got an eastbound approaching. He'll emerge into daylight again briefly after leaving here. Comes an eastbound and a Keele. That's the third westbound in the last 5 minutes. West, this is an important stop. driving Dundas West is a 504 trolley. It's heading to Broadview Station via King Street, downtown Toronto. And the 504 is pulling out, and he'll loop back onto his route. Well, here's another important stop. We can catch the 511 trolley to the rail fan bridge. Well, here we'll say goodbye to Line 2. It's been a thrill, a big thrill.